Guys, this story that I came across is absolutely terrifying. So a number of years ago, a woman was laying down in her bed trying to get some sleep. And just as she was about to fall asleep, her cat started to scratch at the bedroom door to be let out. So despite being super tired, she shuffled out of bed and she went over to the door. And then the cat turned and led her over to the side door to be let outside. She opens the door, slides the screen door open, and the cat runs out. So just as she's about to close the door, she looks across the way towards the neighbor's house and she sees her dad's truck sitting there in the driveway. And then there, standing on the other side of the truck by the hood, she sees a strange figure. She said she could only see it from the shoulders up. She said that its head was larger than its body. It had a small, thin neck and super bony shoulders. It had two large, empty eye sockets where eyes should be, but weren't. They were pitch black, almost like a void against light pale skin. And then the most terrifying part of all, she said she will never forget the details of this thing's face. She said the upper face, kind of where the eye sockets were, seemed to be a pale skin. But as it would go down towards the jaw, it's like the skin was shredded. She said where the jaw was located was complete bone, and it had this wide, toothy, skeletal smile. The texture of its skin, the wrinkles, all the details of the shredded flesh. She was frozen in fear, and this thing just stood there, staring at her. She is absolutely terrified. She slams the door shut and locks it. She's breathing so heavy, and she keeps telling herself, this cannot be real. What the heck did I just see? She said she ran into her bedroom, pulled the covers up over her head like a child, and just laid there, terrified. She said she had flashbacks to back when she was a child and she used to have night terrors, just to how helpless and terrified that she used to feel, all flooding back in. And then things got even more terrifying. She said as she laid there under the blankets, she started to hear a scratching sound like it was inside her bedroom, along the wall that was where the creature was, the direction the creature was in. And it sounded like someone was dragging a nail slowly across her bumpy bedroom wall from the inside. She said the click, click over every bump on that wall just made her grow more and more terrified. She started to cry, and she just was trying to tell herself that this was not happening. She wondered if this thing got enjoyment out of the fear that was coming out of her. She just lay there until the sound stopped, and eventually everything went totally quiet. She said the next day she went and looked out in that direction just to see if there was anything around the area that could have been mistaken for what she thinks she saw. She said there was absolutely nothing there that could have looked like what she saw that night. She also mentioned that the cat that she had let out had returned and was okay. I swear, once you think you've heard it all, another new creature comes out of nowhere. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you have your own creepy story time, please submit it to the email in my bio. I would love to share it anonymously or otherwise.
If you're ever staying at a motel and at about 2 a.m. you start to hear pounding coming from your motel door, do not open it. This story happened to David and Lisa. They were doing a cross-country road trip going from New York all the way to Texas. A few hours into the road trip, David started to get really tired. It was like way past midnight. He was having a really hard time keeping his eyes open, so he decided to start looking for places to stop. They were right outside of Tennessee in like the Knoxville area. Right off of I-40, they saw a huge vacancy sign, like neon, calling their name. As soon as they pull over, they notice that there's no other cars like in the parking lot, but the light is on at the main office, so they decide to just kind of make their way over there. Once they get there, they see an old man standing there behind the front desk. The old man goes and checks them in and gives them the keys to the room. As they're making their way back into the car, they're trying to find their room. They realize that the room is actually located all the way in the back of the building, which completely throws them off because as far as they know, there's no one else here, so why are they being put all the way in the back? Too tired to even care. Mind you, all David wants is a hot shower and bed. They just make it to the room, they get their stuff out, and they get settled in the room. While David is in the shower, Lisa starts to hear what sounds like knocking coming from the front door. She's confused because there's no reason why anyone should be knocking. She looks out the peephole and doesn't see anyone. She then hears a knocking a second time. This time she says, "Who is it?" but no answer. By the third time she hears knocking, she goes and tells David, "Hey, there's somebody knocking. They're not answering. I don't know what's going on." David comes out of the shower. He looks out the peephole. He says, "Who is there?" And then he hears a boy or a man say, "I am with housekeeping. I'm here to drop off your extra linens." David tells him, no thank you, we don't need anything, we just want to get some rest. The minute he says that, he now hears what sounds like banging, like someone's punching the door trying to get in. This really freaks them out, so they go ahead and call the front desk and tell them, hey, there's somebody from housekeeping here saying that they're dropping off extra linens. We don't want to be bothered. Now this person is banging on the door. The old man sounds confused and tells them, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm the only one here. There's no one else here. I don't have housekeeping until the morning. David goes ahead and tells him, well, I don't know who's out there, but they're saying it's housekeeping. The old man goes ahead and says, listen, I'm going to make my way. I'm going to walk around. It's going to take me a few minutes, and I'm going to walk over there. I guarantee there's no one there. There should be no reason for anyone to be there. As the man is walking around, mind you, he's still on the phone with David. He finally gets to where the front door of the hotel or motel would be. The old man tells him, open your door. There's no one here. Like, there's no one out there. I don't see anyone. Meanwhile, David can still hear the knocking or the banging coming from inside the bedroom. Already too frustrated, he decides to just open the door. He opens the door and there's no one. Like, the knocking stops, the banging's gone. There's literally no one there. The old man apologizes profusely and offers to move them to a different room. David is like, absolutely not. Like, we want to leave. We don't want to stay here. But we also want to know, what was that about? Like, there has to be a reason for that. Like, you can't just like have us move somewhere else and not explain what that was about. The old man goes ahead, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but many years ago there was a shooting here. It was like a gang related sort of incident. There was like a man that was in that room hiding from these like gang members. Apparently they found him and they unalived him in that room. Since that happened, no one has ever rented out that room. We typically don't rent it out. Like, we clean it every so often, but we don't ever rent it out. The old man says, I have no idea what possessed me to even give you those keys, especially when there's no one else here. Like, I don't know why I gave you those keys. I must be exhausted. I apologize, but I will move you to another room. David and Lisa weren't hearing any of it. No matter how tired he was, this definitely woke him up. They packed up their car and they were out. You ever had any crazy hotel experiences? I definitely did when I was doing my road trip. Definitely comment down below.
You ever had a dream and then a week or 2 weeks down the line, that exact same dream happens in real time? Yes, this is what the story time is about. When I had a dream about somebody bewitching me, and then I woke up in real time and that person did exactly what I saw in the dream. Okay, let me tell you guys about the dream first, right? Now, if you stay in the township like me, you know that there's something called load reduction, where the electricity varies from 5 p.m. till 10 p.m. Sometimes it varies in the morning from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. But this time, obviously, the power went out at 5 p.m., right? In the dream, remember that. And also, there's this person that picked me up. I don't know who the person was that was driving. This person drives me to this place, and we get there, and there's people that are standing in a circle, and they have a fire lit. You know, the fire is lit with a tire, and it's burning cute. Then there's this other person that I can't see their face as well. They scoop something from somewhere, and then they throw it in the fire. All of a sudden, the fire turns brown, because you know how tire smoke is like white grayish, right? It turns brown, and all of us start coughing. As we're coughing, I start to get dizzy, guys, and I fell face first inside the fire, and the fire burnt my face. Girl, I woke up with a bad headache, thinking, damn, I got burnt. And I didn't know like what was up, so I just prayed about it and moved on with my business. When I had this dream, it was still hot. It was still in January, right? A couple of months down the line, it was winter time. I think it was June, right? At 2 p.m, obviously we get alerts that, you know, it's gonna be load reduction soon. My friend calls me, she's like, hey, like, you know almost that it's gonna be load reduction at 5 p.m, whatever. Smang Mang invited us. Smang Mang is a guy, right? And Smang Mang is my friend's friend, right? Sure. Like, yeah, Smang Mang is like, come through, you know, they're gonna start a fire, they're all gonna be chilling so that we don't get bored, and then at 10 p.m, everybody's gonna disperse, go home when the power comes back. I'm like, chill, we go in the car. As we're going in the car, I low-key feel like this has happened before. So I look at her and I ask her, like, has this ever happened before? She's like, no, what do you mean? Like, load reduction? I'm like, I don't know, but I feel like this day has happened before. You know, it's you know, that kind of weird buzz that you get into. And she just looks at me and we continue about the day. So we get to the location. When we get there, people are standing in a circle. They have a fire lit, and that fire is lit with a tire. My mind keeps on zoning out, but I was like, you know what, whatever, I choose to mice. We get there, we greet everybody, you know, it's nice. Now, at that fire, guys, there is Smang Mang's girlfriend is there. Smang Mang's girlfriend doesn't like me, or she's pretending, and I know why. Because Because one time, my friend, right, actually Smangmang was hosting something with his friends. My friend invited me. I went there not knowing that Smangmang has a girlfriend. When I tell you that we were vibing, we were flirting, whatever, and then we exchanged numbers. When I got home, we were talking. My friend told me Smangmang has a girlfriend. Kati, as my friend is telling me that Smangmang has a girlfriend, Smangmang's girlfriend decided to text me, "Hey girl," and she told me that I'm busy with her man, I should leave her man alone, blah blah blah. And I blocked Smangmang, and me and Smangmang were not cool for a couple of weeks or months, and then we eventually started talking back again, and Smangmang and his girlfriend decided to fix their things, and then they were fine. So basically I was the enemy of what? Progress. And then the girl apologized. And then she apologized to me like, "Hey, like, I'm sorry, blah blah blah." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, we cool." But I knew she didn't like me because she was talking smack about me to other guys. Like, say for example, a guy wants to ask me out, and then she would just talk bad about me to that guy, like, "Oh no," and that's when I knew she didn't like me. But whatever. So we're standing in the fire, whatever. Smangmang's girlfriend is talking to me, and I'm just paying her no mind because ew. Anyways, we're all talking, we're having fun. Smangmang's girlfriend is like, "Yeah, I can put this fire out now because you guys," I don't know, I think they were teasing her or something. And so the guys are like, "No, you wouldn't, as a joke. Baby girl goes and scoops sand. She scoops sand from the pavement and she throws it on the fire. As soon as she throws it on the fire, actually, when she scooped the sand, mind you, she stood for like a good minute, and then she turned around, and then she came and she scooped the sand, and she threw the sand in the fire. All of a sudden, the smoke turned brown, and everybody started coughing. As I'm coughing, I feel dizzy, and I almost fell into the fire. And then my friend grabbed me, and she was like, "Hey, are you okay?" And then we were all laughing, and I was like, "Alright guys, I don't feel well. Like, I really don't feel well." Like, they told me to go sit down, and everybody was cursing out Smangmang's girlfriend or whatever. And I chilled for a bit, and everybody like just left the fire there because I don't know, we don't know what she put in there because it clearly made everybody cough or whatever, and we couldn't stand there anymore. So everybody got mad, and people left like 2 by 2, like 1 by 1. People were leaving, and they're like, "Hey guys, it's cold and it's already 9 p.m. We're just gonna have to wait for the power to come back at our homes because somebody ruined the party." And as we're driving back home, my friend is driving me back home. She had her mom's car, so she's driving me back home, and I am quiet because I told her I'm not okay, and she gave me like water or whatever. I realized that, girl, you were trying to bewitch me, because I remember the dream bar for bar, and that's when I realized that what was happening in my dream is actually happening. The person who was driving me is my friend. The people who were standing in the circle is Smangmang's friends. The person who threw stuff on the fire was Smangmang's girlfriend, and that's why she stood for a minute there, because she was probably concocting her things. And girl, don't underestimate the power of your dreams. Once you dream something, hey, pray and cancel it out, hey, because imagine maybe if I didn't pray, my friend would have never caught me and I would have burnt my face. I feel like she was just jealous, honestly, of me, because I don't know, maybe she thought that I was prettier than her, and her boyfriend keeps on trying me, and if she burns my face, he's not gonna find me attractive anymore. I don't know, I'm just assuming. But why are you fighting with me? Couldn't you bewitch him to like be disabled so girls wouldn't like me? Girls wouldn't like him, I don't know. Hey guys,
Let's read another scary story that was DM'd to us. I grew up in Hungary in the outer districts of Budapest, about an hour away from the city center. For context, my childhood didn't happen in a busy neighborhood or a modern apartment. Instead, I was raised in this old family house that originally belonged to my grandmother. The place was at least 100 years old, and it stood on a huge piece of land. The house itself was built like a long row of 4 connected units, almost like a tiny forgotten terrace. Many people used to live there decades ago, but when my dad inherited it, he bought the others out. We lived in the first unit, and he kept the other 3 locked. And when I say locked, I mean truly locked. No electricity, no water, just darkness and an unbelievable coldness that never left those rooms. Really, even if it was summer, the temperature was negative in there. Inside one of those units, it felt like entering another century. There were old family photos from the previous neighbors, almost 100 years old, scattered around the room. The air was so freezing that I felt it straight in my bones, like I could see my breath. I'm not even kidding. Even back then, I felt something strange about that place, as if it was holding onto memories that didn't belong to us.
But the moment I will never forget happened one summer evening. My sister and I were outside in the garden playing volleyball. It was getting dark, and at one point we accidentally hit the ball toward one of the windows of the locked house. I ran to pick it up, and when I got close to that window, I swear I saw someone looking at me. Not just looking, but smiling. It was standing there in the darkness behind the glass, staring straight into my eyes with this faint, unsettling smile. I saw a man's face, but it was blurry because the window was so dirty. I saw his eyes, and I saw how his eyes were shaped, like he was smiling. That's why I know I didn't hallucinate it. I felt that sudden shock, like my whole body froze. I screamed, and my sister and I ran inside our house and told our dad that someone was in one of the locked houses. He immediately took his keys and walked in with us, but inside there was nothing. No footsteps, no sound, only that unbelievable cold, the kind that feels almost unnatural. Still, I can see it so clearly in my memory, that figure in the window, the darkness behind them, and that smile as they held eye contact with me. Later, we moved to the city center, and the house is still standing today, but I've never gone back inside those locked rooms. Even thinking about it sends a chill down my spine. I never really believed in ghosts, but growing up in a place like that, an old, isolated row house taught me that there might be things in this world we can't fully explain. Oh, that is creepy! I live in Texas, and I don't know why, but whenever I read stories that happen in, like, different countries, it's just almost scarier. But I'm really glad that this person no longer lives in that house, and I hope nobody ever does again. Maybe they should just be torn down.
The only thing she was doing was walking home. He just happened to be walking right behind her. 19-year-old Audrey Griffin was born and raised in Australia, and from a very young age, Audrey excelled in sports. She was so athletic, she loved to do all different kinds of things like water polo, rugby, surf, triathlons, you name it, she did it, and she was good at it. Audrey also had plans to enlist in the Navy, and she did so when she was on her second year at university. Those who knew her described her to be warm, happy, friendly, always with a smile on her face, a radiant soul full of light, kindness, and laughter. She was such a loved girl, and she had such a bright future ahead of her, and it physically pains me to say that she never got to live out her dreams. On March 21st of 2025, Audrey was at a place called Arena in New South Wales in Australia. She was there to visit family and friends and her loved ones before she went off to go to the Navy. Her first day there was spent with family, visiting her grandfather. She had plans to stay the night at her father's house because he lived there as well. And the following day, on the 22nd, she had plans to go out with her friends. They were kind of treating it as a little goodbye party for her, knowing that they wouldn't see her for a while when she did go off to the Navy. But nobody could have predicted that Audrey Griffin would not wake up to see another day. Audrey was out with her friends having fun until around 2 a.m. when she was ready to call it a night. She said goodbye to all her friends, hugged them, told them that she loved them, telling them that she was going to be either calling an Uber or using a different rideshare app to call a ride back to her father's house. But Audrey never made it home. According to police documents, we know that she was last seen around 2 a.m. Her last known location on her phone was near Pump Bridge. On her walk home, she sent 2 Snapchats to one of her friends who started to get concerned about her when she was not responding to any of her text messages the morning after. Audrey's mom now believes that Audrey had started to walk along the water because she was having trouble finding a ride. The morning after, March 21st of 2025, Audrey's mom, Kathleen, woke up, and the first thing that she did was check Audrey's location. Her mom was back in Sydney, but she knew that Audrey had gone out with her friends the night before, and she just wanted to confirm that she had made it home. But her stomach sank when she saw that Audrey's location was not back at her father's house. In fact, it was at a river. So she called Audrey's dad, who confirmed that she had not made it home, but said that she had been considering sleeping over at a friend's house. So her parents called that friend, but she hadn't seen her either. As soon as her friends realized that Audrey was missing, they went straight to the area in which her phone's last location was pinging near the water. Audrey's father, as well as officers, met them there as well. The first things that were found were Audrey's purse and a hair clip left on the ground, and it did not take long for them to notice something in the water. It was Audrey's body, face down in the Arena Creek. She was gone. Authorities were way too quick to rule her passing as an accident, saying that she ended up there as a result of misadventure, suggesting that she accidentally fell into the creek and couldn't get back up. But her parents knew from day one that that was not the case. Her mom, Kathleen, has said, quote, "She was a swimmer. She's an ocean swimmer. She was strong. My gut was telling me one thing, and it was not to give up," end quote. And it was because of her parents and her loved ones fighting for justice that they would figure out what really happened to her and who was responsible. Her family and friends went back to the area in which her body was found in for the next 3 days in a row, looking for anything that might help them figure out what really happened, which is when they found Audrey's phone near a tree, starting to paint the idea that she did not just fall into the water as an accident. And eventually authorities admitted that the initial autopsy results did not sit right with them either, claiming that although the results did not initially suggest suspicious circumstances, something still was not adding up. But that part is confusing to me as to why this was ever ruled an accident, considering that DNA that was not hers was found underneath her fingernails, meaning that there was some kind of struggle and that Audrey clearly put up a fight, literally fighting for her life until her very last moments. Her jacket was also found that had marks of dirt on it, again suggesting that there was a struggle, which I guess those findings were not found out until they looked at her body for a second time, but it makes no sense as to why they would not have found that in the first autopsy. Over the following weeks after discovering her body, police received several leads, but I think Audrey's parents and her friends deserve all the credit because they really were taking matters into their own hands, given that they were not happy about the way that the investigation was being treated. Her mother was going up and down the street, door knocking, stopping at different businesses, asking if they had CCTV footage that pointed towards the water where Audrey's body was found, seeing if they caught anything suspicious, and she was so disappointed when store after store after store told her that authorities never even stopped by, never asked any questions, never asked to see any CCTV footage, never questioned anyone whatsoever, really. And then on April 18th, authorities made an announcement that they were looking for a man that had been seen on CCTV footage in the area in which Audrey would have been walking the same night that she disappeared. Did not say that he was a suspect or a person of interest, only that they were looking to talk to him to see if he knew anything. And then a few days later, on April 21st, almost a month after Audrey's body was found, authorities arrested 53-year-old Adrienne Torrance in connection to Audrey's case. It turns out that after taking a closer look at everything, finally, I don't know what took them so long, but after they did so, on CCTV footage, they had seen a man walking very, very closely behind Audrey. After speaking to witnesses, they also learned that a man had heard what he described to be a distressing scream around 3 a.m. coming from the area near that same creek. And a different witness had seen a strange man behaving very suspiciously, whose description sounded a lot like the man that was seen on CCTV footage. One of Kathleen's friends had also reported that 5 days after finding Audrey's body, she had seen a man suspiciously walking around the crime scene and described him again to look exactly like the man who was caught on CCTV footage, even wearing the exact same outfit. Yet it still took weeks for authorities to connect the dots, but that's when they decided to take a closer look at Audrey's body, which is when they found the male DNA underneath her fingernails, and when they tested it against their database, they got an exact match for 53-year-old Adrienne Torrance, making it abundantly clear that her passing was not as a result of an accident, and once again confirming that she had put up a fight. The story that was now forming to sound likely was that Adrienne had snuck up and approached Audrey on her walk, gotten into a physical altercation with her, overpowering her, ending her life, and then leaving her body in the water. When all this information came out, again, this was not too long ago, this was this year, it was all over the media and the story was getting bigger day by day. People were in disbelief that a man would do something so evil. Yet, after his name was released, there was one person who was not surprised to see his face on the news: Adrienne's ex-wife, Michelle. Adrienne and Michelle got married in 2022, and in the beginning stages of their relationship, Adrienne had been kind, caring, normal, but before long, Michelle saw his true colors and she quickly realized the kind of person that Adrienne was, which was someone with a lot of anger, very little patience, and very, very violent tendencies. He had a lengthy history of aggression against women, and in 2019, he had actually been imprisoned for 20 months, but he was released after only 4. Then he met Michelle, they got married, but throughout their entire marriage, Michelle witnessed firsthand just how quickly Adrienne would lose his temper and how quick he was to act on things that made him angry. She experienced him throwing things around, yelling at her, breaking things around her, so much so that she grew to fear him, deeply terrified of what he could be capable of doing. And in 2024, after filing for divorce, Michelle also made sure to get a restraining order against him. Adrienne didn't care. He broke the order and continued to contact Michelle over and over again, saying that he was going to show up to her house one day to end her. Out of fear, Michelle went back to the police station, and it was only then that she found out that he, 1, had a criminal history, and 2, just how lengthy it was. He had so much on his record, but one thing was constant: aggression against women. And looking at his background signaled that he was the exact kind of person who would do something like what happened to Audrey Griffin. After Michelle made the decision to end their marriage, after it was ruled that Adrienne was supposed to stay away from her, not contact her, he continued leaving her voicemail after voicemail, letting her know that one day he was going to go after her, and every single time Michelle would take this to the police station. But for some reason, 5 months passed of authorities allegedly looking for Adrienne but not being able to find him. Michelle would call regularly asking if they had found him yet, and they would just say, "No, still looking." This went on for 5 months, with no progress the entire time. Michelle sitting in her house, terrified, not knowing if he was looking into her windows, planning to do something terrible. When Michelle went to the police station in January of 2025 to report that Adrian was still refusing to leave her alone and saying that she was terrified of him and constantly looking over her shoulder, he was taken to court. But instead of receiving jail time, he was released and was supposed to be carefully watched and monitored, yet he wasn't. And only 4 months after that, he would take Audrey's life. Soon after his arrest in connection to Audrey, Michelle cooperated with authorities, telling them all about the kind of person that Adrian was, saying that she always had a gut feeling that he was going to hurt someone very badly. She also told them that the night of Audrey's passing, Adrian had called her over and over again, leaving her voicemails telling her that he was going to unalive her. And she said that by that point, she had lost all faith in authorities because she had called about him so many times before, yet nothing was ever done, which is why she did not call them that night. In March of 2025, obviously, I'm not putting any blame on Michelle whatsoever. She was 1,000,000% a victim of Adrian's as well. But my point being that Adrian should have never been allowed to be free just out and about walking the streets based on his past behavior. And when Audrey's parents found out about who Adrian Torrance was and about his past and about how many times he was failed to be put behind bars, I mean, you can imagine how they felt. They could not fathom how a person like that was allowed to just be roaming free. If he had been given jail time like he should have been, Audrey Griffin would still be alive. And her parents were not only sad about their daughter, obviously they were heartbroken, dealing with the biggest loss they had ever dealt with, but they understood that if it wasn't her, it was going to be someone else. Adrian was going to do this to someone someday. Every single warning sign was there, and every single warning sign was ignored. And it makes me sick to my stomach knowing that if Audrey's parents would not have pushed as hard as they did, if they just accepted the ruling that this was an accident, I have no doubt that Adrian would have done this again to somebody else. Maybe to Michelle, or maybe to any other female that he just caught at the wrong place at the wrong time. And as if everything I told you wasn't already enough to prove Adrian's guilt, we later find out that weeks after Audrey's body was found, but before his arrest, he had called a friend to confess, saying, quote, "I just effing clicked and I have no reason for my actions. I just did it, man. I was so effed up, you know. I killed someone about a month ago and now they're looking for me," end quote. Adrian was in custody for 3 days before he unalived himself in his cell. What a coward is all I have to say about that. Audrey's parents have not and will not give up on trying to do everything that they can to make sure that something changes so things like this stop happening. And her mother has said that she's never going to give up on her daughter, but that right now she isn't living. She's just focusing on trying to survive. After her passing, the community really showed up for her family to offer their support. Over 1,000 people gathered together at Terrigal Beach to honor Audrey and to show their support for the family. One of Audrey's favorite times of the day was sunset. The sun is setting right now. It's making me so sad. And when they all gathered together, Kathleen asked for everyone to watch together as the sun went down to honor her daughter. Audrey was a student. She was an athlete. She was a friend. She was a daughter. And she really had her whole life ahead of her. And I hope that her story makes a difference. That is all I have for you guys today. Thank you for listening to this. Thank you so much for spending time with me and for listening to Audrey's story. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. As a kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
Tonight, I'll be sharing 2 short horror stories. So the first story is sent in by a user who is talking about the empty room in their grandparents' house. To their family, this room is known to be haunted. The room belonged to their aunt who got married and moved out. So the room is left vacant and is used as a guest bedroom. One of their relatives actually stayed in this room and got disturbed, and it is said that there's a whole family of jinn living in that room. So the user's story happened at the end of Ramadan during a family gathering at the grandparents' house because Hari Raya was coming soon. So she and her cousin were sleeping in the same room and they decided to stay up till sahur. And they were goofing around till about 4 AM. Then it was time to eat and everyone was outside in the living room. And while eating, she and her cousin saw a shadow of a person. They saw it through a long mirror beside the room they were sleeping at. And that shadow went into the vacant room, which was previously the aunt's room. They took a while to process what they just saw, and then they told their grandmother, and then the grandmother just shrugged it off and said that they were just sleep deprived. Pretty sure grandma just didn't want to scare them further. So the second story was sent in by another person and it happened at their house. Back then, he was around 9 years old and he didn't believe in ghost stories and thought that they were all fake. So one night, he was really urgent and needed to use the bathroom. It was around 2 AM and the entire house was pitch black and he had to go through the kitchen as well as the kitchen to get into the bathroom. He was too urgent, so he didn't bother to turn on the lights. As he was walking through the living room, he noticed like a black shadow at the corner staring at him. He thought it was just his brother, so he didn't really care and he just continued walking to the kitchen. Then, in the kitchen, he saw the same black figure staring at him. He really thought it was his brother playing a prank on him, and then he just angrily said, "Can you stop it?" to him. He went into the toilet, locked the door, and this was when he heard knocks on the toilet door. He didn't want to open the door, so he checked the security camera through his phone, and to his surprise, there was nobody outside. But the knocking sounds kept going. Dude started freaking out and prayed on the spot. Then he gathered enough courage, opened the door, and just sprinted back to the room. I don't know why, but that story just gave me a little bit of goosebumps. But in any case, if you guys have a story to share, drop them in the link in bio and I'll check them out.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories / holiday horror stories, because this kind of falls under both categories. I'm not sure if you saw the video by this woman named like It's Cookie Dough or some fucking shit. I don't know. She's a terrible person. That's all I'm gonna say. She was doing angel tree shopping and the video is just icky. You could very much tell that she was just doing it for content, doing it for clout. She pulled 3 of the angels off the tree, okay? 1 was a girl, 2 boys. The way that she shopped for the girl versus the boys was appalling, honestly. She got ate the fuck up in the comments, and as she should have. Okay, I did a video about it on my backup account actually, and since she's done responses but taken everything down and changed her username as well. One of her response videos, she said that they're gonna be grateful for whatever they get, and if they're not, then that's on them and their upbringing, which yikes. There's been a lot of response to that video for obvious reasons, but also it is angel tree season. So if you are able to do an angel tree, I encourage you to do so. If you're not, interact with people who are doing angel trees, because a lot of people, including myself now, are going to take the money that they are making from their videos and put it towards their angel trees. I'm going to do mine a little bit different though, because this app doesn't like whenever I don't put an orange link in my video. So I'm going to do that in this one and hopefully maybe generate some sales. If not, I'm going to do a couple anyways. Regardless, I'm just not able to do as many as I would like to. Mine is a little bit different. Every year my grandma's church does an angel tree for the local nursing home. Now mind you, this is a very small town and they're only doing it for one nursing home, and the nursing home is a small nursing home. So there's 20 something names on the tree right now. I talked to my grandma last night. She asked me if I wanted a couple and I told her yes, but I wanted to see how many there were. Now, I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of people purchasing for the angel tree. They always do, but there's always quite a few left over as well. However, the issue is these people are not asking for hardly anything, okay? Socks, blankets, some of their favorite snacks, something like that, you know what I mean? Body wash even. And she said this year it seemed as though they were asking for even less, which is crazy because the 1 or 2 that I got last year, the list was small. Okay, so I myself am going to start out with 2, a man and a woman, and then if I can generate any sales of this necklace, you know, I've been promoting it in my other spooky story videos, it's $9. If you cannot purchase, or if you don't want it, you don't need it, if you will just engage with this video, click the link, add it to cart, and then delete it, whatever, that pushes this video out more. This was actually a free sample, so I got one for myself to see how I liked it, and it came with both necklaces. The necklaces are actually very hardy. I'm not gonna lie to you, I have worn this every single day since I got it because I just feel like it looks so cute. I will be purchasing one for my daughter because whenever she saw it, she was like, "Oh my god, your necklace is so pretty." It would be great for a stocking stuffer or even a gift by itself, and it's only $9. Cute and cheap. We love that. And it hasn't turned my neck green, which makes it even better. It's something cute to treat yourself with, or if you want to give somebody a Christmas idea, send it to them to get it for you. If you have a daughter like I do, this would be a good gift for her if she likes jewelry. A sister, because I was thinking about getting my sister one as well. Hopefully she doesn't see this video. Whatever the case, it comes in gold and it also comes in silver. Like I said, it's less than $10. And the shipping was really fast. As I said, I'm going to start with 2, a man and a woman on my own. I don't want to stretch myself too thin. I'm starting a new job tomorrow. I'll post their list whenever I get them, and then whenever I go shopping for them. And I'll also keep everyone updated to see how this video does, and I will potentially be posting more videos in regards to this in hopes to be able to do as much as I can. Stay tuned for a new episode tonight. Stay spooky, friends, just not her kind of spooky.
Somebody submitted a spooky story saying that Nigeria has zombies, like The Walking Dead. I am back with another spooky story. We're gonna call the person who submitted the story T. And T says that he really doesn't tell people this story because every time he starts to talk about it, it's just scary and uncomfortable. He gets these goosebumps all over his body. But he says that since I read stories from all over, maybe somebody else has seen what he saw. So this happened, and I'm sorry if I butcher this, in Ogbomosho last year. So at the time, he was working nights at a small suya stand near the highway. His shift was ending around 3 a.m., but around 2:40 that night, something strange happened. He started to smell wet earth out of nowhere. And he says it wasn't like rain, it was like freshly dug grave earth. He says the generator started acting funny, making like this choking sound. At first, he thought that maybe something spilled. Then he starts hearing footsteps walking in his general direction. And it sounded like slow, but like dragging footsteps. And he says that the walking had like this strange rhythm to it. Like it didn't sound like somebody that was walking on 2 feet. It was making a rhythm like, we will rock you. I'm sorry. So at first T thought maybe it was an animal dragging something. And it sounds like the footsteps are getting closer and closer. He's looking around, the road is empty, no bikes, no cars. And as he's flashing his flashlight, something moves in the corner of his flashlight. And T says, I swear to God, it looked like a man in burial cloth. A fresh burial cloth. The same kind that they used for his cousin 2 weeks prior. And he's looking, trying to like focus his vision, and this man's skin, something's not right. His skin itself was gray and it looked swollen, and there were mud dripping down his fingertips. And T is still trying to make out what he's seeing. Again, the footsteps is not matching this thing walking toward him. But T says, if you thought this was terrifying, it gets worse, because what made him drop his phone wasn't the body, it was the shadow. The shadow on the ground had multiple limbs, crawling ahead of him like a spider. T says, I know this sounds crazy, which is why I don't tell this story, but I swear at what I saw. The thing lifted his head and it was like his neck was broken, and there was mud coming out of his mouth. It sounds like he's murmuring something as if he's wanting to speak. T says, I didn't think, I ran. Finally. Now T says as he's running, the footsteps behind him multiplies. Sounds like there's 4 feet, then 6, then 8. Sounds like a crew of people behind him at this point, and it just sounds like more people are just joining in. When he finally reaches the village entrance, there were a couple of people outside. He says when he got to the village and he finally looked back, it looked like there were dozens of those creatures behind him. And they were all wearing burial cloths that were soaked like they just came straight from the grave. And their bodies were droopy. They looked like puppets almost. And of course, the weird shadows. T says that he doesn't remember fainting, but he woke up inside of someone else's shop at sunrise. And the Suya stand's generator had been snapped in half, like clean. His hat was also found in the dirt. The other villagers that saw him come in, that saw what happened, believed him. There's a lot of other people that didn't see it that don't believe him. So a lot of people think that he's just hallucinating. But he says that he swears that there are zombies in Oyo State, Nigeria. Thank you guys so much for watching the spooky stories, and thank you guys so much for 300,000 followers. I see at the end of every single video, I love you, my blessed humans, from your absolute favorite Haitian homegirl.
Let's talk about one of the scariest moments in TV history, the Wyoming Incident. You guys will not stop asking me to talk about this, so let's get into it because I have something shocking to tell you in the end. In the 1980s, American television would be plagued by strange and sudden hijackings, such as the 1986 Captain Midnight hijacking, 1987 Religious Message hijacking, and most famous of all, the 1987 Max Headroom incident. However, that same year in 1987, thousands of viewers would allegedly unexpectedly encounter one of the scariest TV hijackings of all time, the Wyoming Incident, which viewers reported experiencing headaches, hallucinations, and even vomiting. But before I show you a bit of the video, if you have medical anxiety, get nervous about this type of stuff, just skip this part or watch this video later. Okay, here it is.
Became the first to visit in preparation for the 2008 general election. Republican President Jackson. Romney also plans on visiting in Cheyenne on his presidential tour.
Yeah, really strange. These are saying things like this would have given me a heart attack if I saw this on my television. I have an overwhelming sense of terror from this. So many more things, with people even saying that they felt sick. And unfortunately, guys, there's a scientific explanation behind that. So allegedly, this video plays a frequency between 17 to 19 hertz. Scientifically, anything at 17 hertz can make you feel uneasy, sorrowful, chills on your spine, revulsion, or fear. Anything in the 18 to 19 hertz range causes you to have hallucinations, due to it matching the resonant frequency of the eye. From my understanding, makes your eyes vibrate and basically see stuff. Listen, if it didn't get any worse, I've made a shocking discovery in the research of this video, because in July of 2025, a Brazilian TV network got hijacked and played this.
Ontem é uma área que reúne algumas das No ano passado, 5 pessoas morreram e dezenas ficaram feridas em decorrência das chamas.
So people in Brazil actually experienced the Wyoming incident. Real or fake, it happened somehow, unfortunately. Allegedly, it's even making the YouTube viewers feel sick. So yeah, regardless, this is an absolutely cursed video. I cannot believe that we are covering it. I'm kind of scared. But what do you think? This broadcast truly terrify and sicken Wyoming viewers in the 1980s? Or is this just a horror ARG that fans took too far and made come to life in Brazil? I don't know. Let me know. Did investigators find a rolled up piece of human flesh when they were looking into the disappearance of Lee Sanfrun and Chris Kremers back in Panama in 2014? I'm going to look into this because people have been saying that it was actually found to be an animal skin and it wasn't human skin, and I don't really want to report on things that end up being incorrect. I said it was a rolled up ball of human skin. Let's find out if that is actually true. So I did a deep dive and I found a Reddit page or a Reddit question where somebody asked essentially this question: what's going on with this ball of skin? Because I've read about it, but not from any credible sources. They mentioned that they read about it from 3 separate articles, but they couldn't necessarily figure out if those articles were credible sources and where the articles got that information from. So obviously that made me very speculative as to whether this ball of skin was actually from a human or if it was from an animal, because if you guys follow this case, you would know there are a lot of rumors, and on YouTube I do a really long deep dive into this, about 50 minutes, and I debunk some of the rumors. And in one of my videos on TikTok, I don't debunk a rumor, but I essentially argue for the other side of a relatively common rumor and say, hey, like, I actually think this is what happened. We need to make sure that we are doing this properly, this research correctly, and correcting things that might be incorrect. So from my research, I found that the rolled up ball of skin was human skin. It was not from an animal. It was not from a cow or whatever. I think maybe the fact that it was from an animal is the rumor. The fact that it was from a human or from Lee Sanfrun specifically is the truth. And I looked into this and found an article that was written in, 2014, which is when the girls went missing. So I would say it's more of a credible source than more recent articles written, because more recent articles, generally it's a lot harder to get around what's rumored and what's true. It's written by a Panamanian news company called La Estrella de Panama. Sorry if I'm not the best at pronouncing that. And here's how the article starts. During the first week of September, the Laboratory of Biomolecular Analysis received a new set of evidences related to the case of Lee Sanfrun and Chris Kremers, the 2 missing Dutch girls. And I think this is converted to English, just letting you guys know. It was probably originally in Spanish. So if there's any weird words or being used, it's probably because it was translated. So the scientists essentially had an envelope of evidence that was related to Lee Sanfrun and Chris Kremers, and the scientists took out what was described as an earthy mass from the envelope, pulled out a large bone, which was later identified as the femur, and another shorter bone, or a tibia. So from what I'm reading, it seems they actually had a lot of pieces of tissue. So for example, some parts were wider, talking to the tissue, and measured 8 to 15 centimeters. Other parts in turn measured only 3 centimeters. Later on, he would identify which part of the body this tissue covered and to whom it belonged. So that's implying that this tissue is separate from any bones or specific body parts. And so it had to be tested to figure out what body parts it was part of, also whose skin it was. Was it Chris Kremers, Lee Sanfrun's, or someone else's? The test confirmed that the sample belonged to Lee Sanfrun and used to cover her femur. The evidence showed the first signs of decomposition and was covered in dust. The remains were found on August 29th. This information is important for the research because it will allow to establish the moment of death and the conditions where the body was placed afterwards. If we suppose that the girls died during the first week of April, because they went missing on April 1st, right now, after 5 months of death, larvae should not be seen. This points out that the body is or was kept in a humid place, under shadow, and in low temperatures, according to the reports. He observed black dots on one of the tissue. These dots occupy approximately 1/5 of the surface. A histopathological analysis. A histopathological analysis will define what these dots are for. The same study will conclude if there were any injuries to the tissue. He checked red stains, which correspond to the hemoglobin of the muscle. Some parts of the skin had holes, 8 to 10 of them, probably made by insects. So there you have it. It seems that the skin that was found was Lee Sanfrun's. Now, I think the big thing here is, was it rolled up in a ball?
They mention an earthy mass, but there doesn't seem to be a connection to whether that earthy mass was skin. My guess is the earthy mass was the skin because it talks about earthy mass and bones. And then this article talks about analyzing the skin and then well-kept bones. So if there's no mention of the earthy mass later, my assumption would be that the earthy mass would be the skin. And I don't know if skin would be like laid out, like it probably would be kind of a rolled up ball of skin, an earthy mass of skin or something like that. So this, it seems where everyone's talking about the skin that's being found, it comes from this article, and I will say it seems credible to me. It seems credible to me. It was written at the time these girls went missing. It is talking specifically about the laboratory, the scientists, all of that, what they did to look into this and what their conclusions were. It also, I don't mention this, but it talks about kind of the various preparations they did to make sure that everything was clean and sterile. There is mention of a lack of detailed description of the chain of custody, which is necessary for these types of cases. I mentioned this in both my long form video and my short form videos on TikTok. The chain of custody on this was atrocious, and that has caused a lot of problems because we don't know where things were put, whose fingerprints were being analyzed, if fingerprints were analyzed, if it was the detectives, if it was the police officers, if it were Dutch authorities, Panamanian authorities, if it was, you know, the two indigenous individuals who found the backpack, right? Or if it was somebody who may have been nefarious and hurt these girls. We don't know those things because the chain of custody was so terrible. Anyways, I just really wanted to address that because I've gotten comments about it on my YouTube and my TikTok videos, and I'm like, okay, like I don't want to be pushing a fake news, right? False narrative, something incorrect. In the name of these girls, I want to make sure that my reporting is accurate, so I wanted to correct it if I was incorrect, or mention that I was correct, and I find that I was correct, and yeah, so I just want to let you know, when you guys bring these things to my attention, if I hear it enough, I will look into it and make sure that my reporting is credible and accurate, and I will correct myself if I make a mistake. It is very hard looking into these kinds of things, especially something like this, because this is so big online and there are so many people who have tried to come up with theories and look into it and figure it out for themselves, that rumors are abound. So I want to make sure that I'm not basing my stuff off of rumors, and instead I can source my material. So there's a source, like I said, La Estrella de Panama. Name of the article is Medical Examiner Studies a Piece of Skin from Missing Dutch Girl. You can look it up and find it yourself if you want to double check that.
Some people are literally born with hate in their heart, and you're not going to believe what this guy did. So the man in this photo is named Martin Blackwell. Martin was a truck driver, and at the time he was dating a woman called Jaya Tolbert. And whenever he would come back into town from one of his work trips, he would just end up staying the night at her apartment. But Jaya also happened to have a son, and his name was Marquez. But there was one thing that Martin did not like about Jaya's son, and it was that he was a gay man. And on one of the nights that Martin happened to come by to the apartment to spend the night, Marquez and his boyfriend were in the apartment. When Martin arrived to the apartment, he realized that Marquez and his boyfriend were sound asleep. He then goes into the kitchen, boils a large pot of water, and then does the unthinkable. He then takes the boiling water and dumps it right over both of the men. And when he was asked why, this is what he had to say. They were stuck together like two hot dogs, so I poured a little hot water on them to help them out. They'll be alright though, it was just a little hot water. Completely insane. And unfortunately, it was not the first time that he had expressed disgusting behavior towards Marquez and his boyfriend. He had a known history for using derogatory terms and essentially just harassing them. And it only took the jury 90 minutes to determine that he was guilty, because after all, they determined that it was premeditated since he went into the kitchen and waited for the water to boil, meaning that he had plenty of time to decide that this was the wrong thing to do. And after the water was dumped on the two men, Martin basically kicked them out of the apartment, leaving them to seek for help on their own. Both of them had to be hospitalized and received multiple surgeries and treatments to recover. And Marquez's boyfriend even had to be induced into a coma for 2 entire weeks. Thankfully, both of the men did recover, but it just goes to show you that some people are just absolutely miserable and carry so much hate in their hearts.
In 2023, Sam Goldberg, the former fiance of Ellen Greenberg, the woman who died via 20 wounds to her chest, back of her neck, back of her head, issued a public statement to address the individuals who were accusing him of attacking her or killing her, or in some way covering up what actually happened to Ellen Greenberg. And this is what he said. He claimed that those theories were the pathetic and despicable attempts to desecrate my reputation and her privacy by creating a narrative that embraces lies, distortions, and falsehoods in order to avoid the truth. Mental illness is very real and has many victims. Now, the main narrative of this from the police department, from the official reports, is that Ellen Greenberg did this to herself. And they often point to the fact that she was having mental illness problems near the time where she died, specifically issues with anxiety. And it seems that Sam Goldberg has also come to this conclusion, and he has now created, in 2023, he has issued a public statement that says the same. What I find interesting is that he is responding to individuals who are accusing him of, foul play. But of the individuals who are accusing him, or at least pointing a critical eye at Sam Goldberg, is also Ellen Greenberg's own parents. Her parents do not believe that she did this to herself. They do not believe that this was a mental health issue, and they have turned their eye to looking at Goldberg because he was really the only person that was involved in that entire situation. So he's not just targeting internet sleuths online that are, running conspiracy theories. He is actually addressing the parents as well. It's interesting to make this statement because this argument is despite the fact that it was later found out that the security guard was not with him when he allegedly broke down the door to get into Ellen's unit and to then find her dead on the floor. This is despite the fact that it later came out that he was not on the phone with his uncle and with his cousin when he broke down that door either, meaning no one actually was there or a witness to him breaking down that door. The fact that the door was locked from the inside with like a hotel bar lock is one of the biggest pieces of evidence that support the argument that Ellen did this to herself and that there was no homicide involved. To this day, they still believe that she did this to herself, but obviously a lot of people do not believe that, including her parents. I believe a Netflix documentary or docuseries just came out about it. I've not watched it. If you have, let me know what you think about it. I've heard pretty good things about it, but I also know Annie Elise did a video where she mentioned that it seemed like they didn't discuss some of the more contentious aspects of this case, which if that was the case, then I'd be a little disappointed because I think that is part of this conversation. But that's Ellen Greenberg's case. I'm pretty sure I'm done with this entire series. If you guys have any questions or want me to cover anything, please comment because I'll do that. But I think that's the end of the series. And we'll go into the next one.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
Let's talk about the first Black Phone movie because I just seen the second one, so I had to talk about the first one before I give my thoughts on the second movie. Now, this movie is actually really good to me. I know a lot of people didn't like it, and a lot of people really did like it, but I don't know, something about like 70s and 80s horror movies just give me such a creepy vibe that I like. So the movie is about this shy young boy named Finn. His dad was an alcoholic and he lives with his sister. His mom passed away. And it just shows, the differences in like family trauma and grief and all that. So there was this guy and his name was the Grabber, and he basically was abducting these kids. I believe it was just little boys if I'm not mistaken, but he was abducting all of these kids and they never knew who it was. Like back then they didn't have all of, the stuff that we have now to find people, but they just were scared for their lives. All these kids were missing and nobody knew or had an idea who it was. So that's when he basically abducted Finn and he put him in his basement, which was soundproof. And the only thing that was in there was this old, rusty, dirty mattress and this black phone that was on the wall that was disconnected, broken, that's been broken for years. And like it just didn't work at all. So Finn's down there. He's sad. He's upset. He just got kidnapped, obviously. He's scared out of his mind. And then he hears this phone that does not work and haven't worked in over a decade ringing, but only he can hear the phone rings. So basically, the spirits or the ghost of the victims that the Grabber, that was the name of the killer, the Grabber's victims were contacting like Finn through the spiritual world, trying to help him get out of there because they did not want him to be the next victim. So the ghosts were basically like coaching him on how to escape, how to basically defeat this Grabber, telling him their weaknesses, what to do, teaching him how to fight. Because it was just this little scrawny little boy. And the whole time in the movie, while he's down there, fighting for his life, his sister is having these dreams and visions and seeing different glimpses of what's going on. And she literally what helped and led the police down there to find Finn. So it was just really crazy how his sister was having these dreams and led the police to find him. And he ended up killing the grabber because the ghost assisted him in teaching him how to unalive him by packing dirt inside of the phone and just making it heavy and how to like escape. And he beat the brakes out of him and he literally unalived him. Now, the movie was good to me. It was deep. It was just a good little movie. It wasn't just, jump scare. And I feel like when people think of horror, they just feel like everything just got to be jump scare. And that's not all what horror is about. It was a good movie. But let me know if y'all like The Black Phone and if y'all watched the second one. Now, stay tuned for part 2 while I talk about my opinions and thoughts in the breakdown of the second movie. The Black Phone 2. Let's talk about it because I honestly really enjoyed the movie. Now, the movie did start off a little slow, but I mean, it gotta just lead you. You know, movies can't just start off just showing all the, gems. It gotta lead to some suspense. I know a lot of people was like, oh, it took too long to get to the point. It did start off a little slow, but like I said, it had to like show the backstory on what really was happening. So let's talk about what actually happened. So in this movie, it really starred the sister. Like, if you watch the first Black Phone, you have to watch the first Black Phone to understand this movie. The sister had visions of basically like where her brother was when he got abducted by the grabber. So on this one, she started having visions of basically her mom when she was younger, but she did not know that it was her mom. If you watch the first Black Phone, it talked about how the mom basically committed suicide or that she passed away, and it really talked about it on this particular movie. So she's having these visions of this girl in this icy area talking on this phone in the middle of nowhere like it was a camp. So she's like, who is this girl? So she basically went to the past and talked to her mom. So that's when she finds out basically that her mom went to this camp that the grabber went to. Now she was wondering why the correlation, why is her mom like telling her to go to this camp in the middle of the freezing snow and blizzards and all that stuff like that. But she had to find out. She had to have answers because she kept every night. She was waking up, sleepwalking, going to these different places and seeing these horrible visions. And Finn, at this point, he's basically just smoking his life away and just trying not to think about it because he's been through some stuff, rightfully so. He don't even want to think about it, but he keep hearing the phones. Only Finn can hear the phone rings. So when he started hearing the phones, he knows something was going on, but he know the grabber is dead because he killed him. So he's like, why am I hearing these phones? What's going on? And the sister was like, look, we got to go to this camp. We got to figure something out. We got to pretend like we finna be camp counselors or whatever, and we got to get to the bottom of what's going on. So they, go to the camp, and they're the only ones there other than like the owner, 2 other workers, and the owner's niece, I believe. So that's when they're trying to get like different details on what's going on and why did the mom and the grabber want them there. So come to find out, the grabber's first victims were at that camp. And the grabber is what unalived their mom. They thought that the mom had unalived herself, but in reality, it was the grabber. So, like I said, the grabber is a ghost now. So they figured out pretty much that the grabber cannot, like, he's going to keep continuing doing what he's doing until the little boys that he unalives, like, spirits is laid to rest. That was why he was still alive and he still had so much dominion, was because he was still fueled on by those missing boys that he killed in the 50s that never have been found. So they basically found the little boys that was basically in this frozen lake. They had to dig in the lake, like drill in the lake, find the boys' remains, and like the boys' like souls and spirits is what helped them kill the grabber once and for all. So this movie was really deep. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, you had to have watched the first Black Phone to understand the correlation. It did start off a little slow, was a little cheesy little elements, but I liked the movie. It was good. Everything don't have to be jump scared, but it had a good, a good plot to it. I liked it. I like how they incorporated the mom. I liked how they just tied everything in from the first one. So let me know what y'all think in the comments and if y'all like this one and if y'all watched the first one as well.
Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pets.
Susie, you crazy girl. It's almost as crazy as the time that me buying 4 chairs off of the marketplace almost got me. This happened a couple years ago. I was in the market for these 4 very antique looking dining room chairs. The lady was only asking like $40 for them, which was a steal. So I'm really excited to go pick them up. As I'm getting ready to leave, my then boyfriend asked if I wanted him to come along, being that he had the bigger car that we could just take his truck. The whole way there, this lady is very actively texting me back and forth, like on the messenger, and sounding really excited about me coming to pick up these chairs. Once we get to the address she gave me, I realized that it's the address of an abandoned clinic.
I try to rationalize it and just think that maybe her apartment just happens to be on the second floor. A lot of those businesses, or like those rundown businesses, have apartments on the second floor. As we pull up, looking around, trying to figure out where her house is, I happen to look across the street and I see these 4 very sus looking men coming out of this like random alleyway, and they're just glaring at the car that I'm in. Once they notice that I am not alone, that I have my then boyfriend in the car with me, they start to kind of back away, but like all of their attention was focused on me. Alarm bells start going off and I tell my then boyfriend that we need to just go. As I'm driving away, I'm kind of annoyed at the whole situation, not really thinking of how bad it could have been, but I'm more mad at the fact that I didn't get the antique chairs. So I go to text her and she has blocked me. And I'm normally not this dumb, but prior to me agreeing to go meet her at her house for these chairs, her and I had chatted and she had mentioned how she worked at the same hospital that I worked at. So I kind of just looked at her as a fellow employee. We leave and she has me blocked on everything. The next day when I go to work, I go to look her up at work and she has never worked there, nor has anyone ever heard of her. But yeah, store-bought pesto. I mean, that's wild.
At first glance, this picture looks completely normal. It was taken in 1995 at one of Mike Tyson's big fights. When you look closer, things get kind of weird though. You can see right here that there's this man holding this telephone. Now again, this picture was taken in 1995. That looks like a smartphone. Now mind you, smartphones didn't really hit the public until 2005-ish. So this means that this was taken 10 years before people were seen walking around with smartphones. So what exactly is that? Many people have speculated that it might be a time traveler. And this isn't the only weird picture that I found. Here's a picture from 1938, and it appears as if a woman is walking down the road holding a cell phone to her hands. Now, we were nowhere near cell phones at this point. At least not cell phones that were accessible to the general public. And then there's also this picture. If you can look close, there's a better picture. If you look closely, you can see this guy. It looks like he's wearing fairly modern clothes. This wouldn't fit in the early 1930s either. So who are these people? Are they time travelers? Is this proof that time travel either exists or will exist sometime in the future? This photo has been completely debunked. The granddaughter of this woman came forward and said that her grandmother was a part of this like experiment with, or they were just like trying out these mobile phones. Her grandmother was given one for a week. She is seen here talking to a scientist, one of the scientists that gave her the phone. This picture has also pretty much been debunked. Many historians say that this person isn't, like, he doesn't necessarily stand out. This would be something that people would have worn in that time. As for this one, I couldn't find anything that it was fully debunked. It really does look like a cell phone. It looks like any cell phone that you could get on the market today, but many people do speculate that it might just be a quarter. So what are your thoughts on this? Is this proof that time travel is real, or is it just a quarter we're reading into things? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Follow for more spooky things.